When I first bought the little house by Clearwater Lake 22 years ago, I didn't care much about fancy neighborhoods or fancy people. I cared about the view. From my front porch, the sunrise painted the water pink and gold every morning, and by dusk, the reflection of the pines looked like oil paintings on glass. It wasn't big city money that brought me there. It was peace. After a lifetime of hard work and loss, I just wanted to sit with the sound of water lapping at the shore and the wind whispering through the trees. Back then, there was no HOA, no regulations about mailbox color or lawn symmetry. Folks minded their own business. You could fish when you wanted, barbecue in the front yard, and wave to your neighbors without anyone taking notes. It was simple, honest living. Then came progress. Or at least that's what they called it. New people started moving in. Young professionals, retirees with city money, and eventually the idea of a homeowners association. To keep things organized, they said, to maintain property values. I didn't like the sound of it, but I was outvoted. I figured it couldn't hurt too much. For the first few years, it didn't. Then Victoria Caldwell arrived. Victoria came from California, driving a spotless white Lexus and wearing the kind of smile that says, "I'm in charge and you're not." She moved into the biggest house on the North Shore with her husband, Bill, a quiet, gentle man who always looked like he was apologizing for something. Within a month, Victoria was the HOA president. Within 3, she was rewriting every rule in sight. You couldn't hang clothes to dry outside. You couldn't park an old truck in your driveway. You couldn't even put up a flagpole without approval. And fishing, God forbid anyone fished without her blessing. I'd been fishing that lake since before Victoria even knew it existed. My father taught me to cast when I was 9. My boy caught his first bass there before he left for college. That lake wasn't a hobby, it was home. So when a letter came in the mail, fishing privileges suspended until HOA permits are issued, I laughed, thought it was a mistake. I ignored it and went down to my dock like I always did, boat motor humming softly in the morning mist. That's when the first confrontation happened. 2 HOA volunteers, clipboards in hand, marched right up the dock like tax collectors. "Mr. Landry," one of them said, "you're in violation of HOA Code 7.3.1. "Violation?" I asked, lower my rod. "Of what?" "Breathing near the water?" "Fishing without authorization," he said flatly. I grinned. "Son, I've been fishing this lake since before you had a mortgage." "Doesn't matter," the other replied. "All lake activities require a permit now." I just shook my head and cast my line again. "You boys have a good morning." They didn't like that much. The next day, I found a fine taped to my door, $1.50. The next week, another, and when I refused to pay, Victoria herself showed up, all perfume and power. "Mr. Landry," she began in that syrupy sweet tone, "we value your presence in this community, but you're setting a bad example." "Bad example?" I asked, "for fishing in my own backyard?" "The lake," she said, adjusting her pearl earrings, "is a shared community asset. Rules ensure fairness." Fairness. I muttered, funny word coming from people trying to take what doesn't belong to them. Her eyes hardened. "If you continue to defy regulations, there will be consequences." I smiled calmly. "Ma'am, you can't scare a man who's already been through worse." And I meant it. I'd seen what real fear looked like in war, in hospitals, in funerals. A woman waving HOA bylaws, wasn't it? Weeks passed. The tension grew thicker than the humidity that summer. They kept sending letters. I kept fishing. Some neighbors sided with me quietly, nodding as they passed. Others whispered about the stubborn old man. I didn't care. That lake had seen my best and worst days. It was sacred. Then one morning, I woke up to silence. No birds. No ripples. Just stillness. I walked down to the dock and saw it. The water had turned cloudy and greenish-brown. A thin film floated on top, and along the shoreline, dead fish littered the sand. The smell hit next, acrid, chemical, unnatural. My stomach turned. I knelt by the water and picked up a bluegill, limp and lifeless. My hands shook. Someone had poisoned the lake. That night, I barely slept. I called the environmental authorities first thing in the morning. They took samples, ran tests, and came back days later with grim news. The lake contained toxic levels of algae and herbicides, illegal concentrations. Someone had dumped them directly into the drainage pipes. Could runoff from lawns cause that? I asked. The inspector shook his head. Not at these levels. This was deliberate. Deliberate. The word hit me like a punch. I didn't need to guess long who'd done it. Later that week, while walking my dog past the clubhouse, I heard voices. Victoria's, sharp and cutting. Well, she said, laughing, at least no one's fishing anymore. The lake's too toxic for that. Another voice chuckled nervously. Was it safe to dump that much? Oh, please, she replied. It's just algae killer. It'll clear up. The point is, problem solved. I stopped dead in my tracks. I wanted to confront her right there, but I didn't. Instead, I recorded the conversation on my phone, went home, and began my own investigation. I took photos of the runoff pipes behind the clubhouse, where the grass was unnaturally dead. I collected my own water samples. I reached out to a friend who worked for the state's Environmental Enforcement Agency. He promised to look into it quietly. Meanwhile, the HOA pretended nothing was wrong. They even had the nerve to hold a community beautification day, planting flowers near the dead shoreline. I watched from my porch as Victoria smiled for photos, standing proudly beside a sign that read, "Preserving our environment." The hypocrisy was sickening. But karma, I've learned, doesn't need help. It finds its own way. A few weeks later, I got a knock on my door at dawn. It was my neighbor, Claire, a sweet woman who lived 2 houses over with her grandkids. "Jack," she said, panicked, "our tap water smells funny, like bleach." By that afternoon, the whole neighborhood was talking. Cloudy water, bitter taste, kids getting stomach aches. The HOA called plumbers, but nothing worked. The county came out and tested the wells. The results? Contamination. The chemicals had leached from the lake into the underground aquifer, the same aquifer supplying water to the entire subdivision. I'll never forget the look on Victoria's face at the emergency meeting that evening. The community hall was packed. People were shouting, demanding answers. She stood there trembling slightly, trying to hold her composure. "We don't yet know the cause," she said, "but we're doing everything possible to resolve the situation." I raised my hand. "You do know the cause, Victoria," I said. "You poisoned it." The room went silent. Every eye turned toward me. "I have recordings," I continued. "Photos, samples, everything." Her face went pale. "You're lying," she snapped. "This is slander." I played the recording aloud, the one of her bragging about stopping fishing. The room erupted. People gasped, cursed, shouted. Some even stood up, demanding her resignation on the spot. The board tried to calm things down, but was too late. The truth was out. The next morning, state environmental officers returned with warrants. They confiscated HOA files, bank records, and maintenance logs. By week's end, the association was fined $400,000 for environmental damage and unauthorized chemical dumping. The HOA's insurance refused coverage, citing intentional misconduct. Members were hit with massive special assessments. And just like that, the empire Victoria had built crumbled. She resigned, tried to move, and was later charged with environmental negligence. Her husband left soon after. The house stood empty for months, its manicured lawn growing wild again, as if nature herself was reclaiming what was hers. Meanwhile, I stayed. The lake slowly began to heal. Volunteers, real neighbors this time, came together to help clean it. We planted native reeds, released new fish stock, and installed filters along the runoff pipes. It took years, but the water started to clear. The loons returned. The kids began to swim again. One summer evening, as the sun sank behind the pines, I sat on my dock with my fishing rod, the way I had years before. The water shimmered gold. I heard laughter from the shore, a group of teenagers skipping stones, carefree and happy. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace again. As I reeled in a small base, I thought about everything that had happened, about how greed, pride, and control nearly destroyed something beautiful. About how one woman's arrogance became her undoing, and how sometimes justice doesn't come from anger or revenge. It comes from patience, truth, and the simple passage of time. I still get letters from the county every now and then, updates about lake conservation efforts. I still fish every morning, and sometimes new neighbors stop by to chat. They ask about the history of the lake, and I tell them the story, not with bitterness, but with gratitude, because I learned something out here. You can't poison what's pure without eventually drinking from the same well. Life has a way of making things right. The earth, the water, they heal when you let them, and so do people. When I cast my line now, I don't fish for sport. I fish for peace, for memory, for all the mornings I thought I'd lost this place forever. And when that line tugs and the water ripples in the golden light, I whisper a quiet thank you to the lake, to time, and to the truth that always, eventually surfaces.